So what should you do when you have an image that you really like and you want to get it ready for production for, say, an animated series or a graphic design layout? I have a 4-step process I follow to take any AI-generated image from good to great. Today on Building Dreams. This episode of Building Dreams is brought to you by the new Everly Heights Patreon. Get access to the custom Stable Diffusion models we're using to build Everly Heights, as well as our morning meeting production diary, by supporting us at patreon.com/EverlyHeights. And by StreamYard. Use it like I am to bring your streams to life. Get $10 in free credit by going to streamyard.everlyheights.tv to sign up. I'm Bill Meeks for Building Dreams, where I teach you how to build dreams of your own, just like I'm building the first pilot set in my Everly Heights universe, a sitcom called Very Special. Now, I'm really digging into production here on Very Special, which means I need sets for my actors to perform on. There's something my boss at my former job used to tell me all the time. They said that taking something from 90% good to 100% good is 90% of the work. It's kind of flip-flopped, right? And you don't want to just take any old image that Stable Diffusion or whatever AI software you're using spits out and think, okay, good, it's done, I'll move on. That can work, but it definitely adds to the criticisms that we as AI artists face. And I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that any image we're going to use for something as permanent as an animated series or a magazine or a comic book, it looks as professional as anything done by any traditional artist. I'll go over this in detail in a minute, but there's 4 steps we're going to go through here. We're going to re-render our image at the ultimate settings, including using high-res fix to get a nice big image. Then we're going to take that image and upscale it again through ControlNet Tile to make a really big image that is appropriate for HD animation. Then we're going to bring that big honking image over into Photoshop so we can clean it up and add some details that are appropriate to our story. And finally, if you make a ton of changes in Photoshop and it's not quite looking like the same universe anymore, I'm going to show you how to take that image back into Stable Diffusion and re-render it one more time with your model to give it a final sheen and tie everything together. Now here's our base image for the Everly Heights Community Center. This is sort of the center of the community because Everly Heights is a town that's funded and thrives on the arts. So this is where the arts board, who has a tremendous amount of power in Everly Heights, meet to discuss things. I definitely wanted to have an influence of early 90s Nickelodeon on this because I love Nickelodeon back in the 90s. And I think it came out really nice. There's a fun mural on the wall. The windows are a little funky up top. The doorknobs are definitely funky. And as much as I love the mural guy, I'd love to sort of dial that in and make it a little more cohesive because right now there's a lot of junk on him, right? So I definitely want to improve that. But first, we're going to upscale it so I have a lot of pixels to work with in Photoshop. Now, as much as I love the mural of the weird guy and didn't want to lose it entirely, I still wanted to dial it in before I take it to Photoshop for finishing touches. I ran all my set images with basic settings to speed things up, but now that I have a bunch, I'm going to take them through a few upscaling steps to prepare them for the final touches in Photoshop. I knew I wanted to use high-res fix, which does a latent upscale on the image as it generates it in text to image. While I generally do a quick upscale using ControlNet Tile for most of my workflows, and we'll still be addressing that later in the process, I wanted to do the initial upscale within the generation itself to increase the quality of the base image. I decided to run some tests with high-res fix using an XYZ grid, then use these as my default settings moving forward, although I'll have the freedom to tweak settings as we go. Oh, to follow my upscale process, make sure to make a note of your original image dimensions as you'll need them when we do our second upscale. In my case, that's 1560 by 664. I made some XYZ grids with various settings to dial things in, as you can see here. My first parameter was the denoise value, or how much the image changes as it's running high-res fix. and I ran it between 0.4 and 1. And as you can see here, it goes from 0.4 denoising, which barely changes the image at all the way up to 1.0 denoising, which does change the image quite a bit, but it still retains the same basic flavor. But I really like that big guy up on the wall, so I think it's going to be 0.4 for me. Next up, I tested the high-res steps, which was basically how many steps it should run on high-res fix after it does the initial generation. I tested values of 0 to 40. And, ultimately the image changed very little. These aren't full resolution here, but even at full resolution, it didn't change it all that much after about 10 steps. The first 10 steps made the image a lot sharper and made the details more defined. But past that, it didn't change it all that much. And last but not least, since I'm using an SDXL model, I wanted to test the SDXL refiner, which is a separate model that comes in at some point during the generation to clean it up and make it better. I ran these ones at 0.2 to 1.0, and again, this just basically tells Stable Diffusion when to switch from the standard SDXL model to the refiner model. And last but not least, I tested out my high-res fix upscaler. These are all various upscalers that I tend to use on a day-to-day basis when I'm upscaling images in Stable Diffusion, but I wanted to see which one resulted in the best image. And again, these are all focused on saving me time cleaning them up in Photoshop, which we'll get to soon. And again, these settings are all for high-res fix. The high-res fix upscale I found worked best was 1.75. Oh, by the way, the XYZ grid doesn't support this value, the upscale value, so I had to dial it in manually by doing like 1, 1.5, 2, etc., etc. But I finally landed on 1.75. Now, as far as the high-res upscaler, I ended up going with 4X NMKD Superscale SP 178,000_G, which is actually a pretty recent upscaler that I found maybe a couple weeks before I did these tests. But it worked really well and gave me the best quality consistently. Now, I tested out a lot of different ranges for high-res steps. After 10 steps, I really didn't see any substantial differences to the image, so we're going to stick with 10. And as far as the denoising strength, 0.4 to 0.7 on the grid seemed to work really well, and there were some small subtle differences between them, but not enough to worry about, so I'll probably start with a 0.4 and know I can take it up to 0.7 if I need to. And then last but not least is the refiner, which I found worked great at my standard default value of 80% or 0.8 on the refiner, meaning that the refiner comes in after Stable Diffusion is 80% done generating the images. Now, these are all my specific homespun models, and you might come up with different settings, but these are the ones that work best with my models and my artistic goals. You can feel free to use them as a jumping off point, or take this process and generate some XYZ grids yourself and test out your own settings to see what works best for you. Now that we have our ideal image with a base upscale, we'll run it through another upscaler to take it up to a size that will look good as a 4K animation, while allowing me to zoom and pan the shot without losing resolution. As before, we're going to dial in the settings for the tile upscale with an XYZ grid. Now, to do a tile upscale, you'll need Ultimate SD Upscale for Automatic 1111, which you can get on GitHub and install through the Extensions tab. I have a link down in the show notes. Now, a word of warning, I really love ControlNet Tile as an upscaler, but they don't have the model available for SDXL yet, so my custom Everly Heights models won't work here. So I'm going to use the Rev Animated model for Stable Diffusion 1.5 at a low denoising strength as the base model for the upscale, as well as a standard SD 1.5 model just to have a comparison. Okay, first you're going to want to load your high-res fixed image into image to image with no prompt. Then change the dimensions back to the original dimensions you were using before the high-res fix. In my case, 1564 by 670. Don't worry, you won't lose detail. It just squeezes it all back down so Stable Diffusion can handle the image. Next, I'll set up an XYZ grid with Rev Animated and the base Stable Diffusion 1.5 model at various denoising strengths. I used 0.1, 0.3, and 0.5. And I also ran another row on the grid saying control net's more important, the prompt's more important, or balanced. And I also rendered these all out in Ultimate SD Upscale at 1x upscale for consistency. And I really think the balance came out a lot better on control net. You can see here once we get into the higher denoising strengths like 0.7, the image gets a little faded, a little more blurry. But overall, I think balance worked great. And as you can also see here, I've been testing out denoising the entire time. And I really think across all three options, all three grids I generated, that 0.3 denoising works best, which means it's going to change the image a little bit. It's going to add a little bit of detail, but it's mainly going to hew to the image that I submitted for the upscale. And even though I didn't see a big difference between Rev Animated and the standard 1.5 model, I'm going to go ahead and use Rev Animated as my base since I used it as a base to make the data set I trained my model on. You can see my video on how I built my set generator for more info on that. Okay, now that we have the basic settings dialed in, I wanted to see how big I can make this image because again, I want to be able to upscale as much as possible without losing quality to give me plenty of room and resolution to zoom and pan my shots without running a cropped image back through the upscaler. Because, you know, even though it only takes 2 or 3 minutes to upscale an image, I'd rather use that 2 or 3 minutes to animate. So I took the settings from my last set of grids and then did an upscale size test at 1.7 times, 2 times, and 4 times with Control Net Tile and Ultimate SD Upscale using the settings from grid 1. Now, I wasn't able to test the upscale sizes with an XYZ grid since the setting wasn't exposed in that plugin, so I ran the images through the upscaler manually. So first up, we have 1.75 times here, which is the same dimensions as our high-res fix upscale. And it looks pretty good. Next, we have a 2 times upscale, which is only a slight bump up from our original settings, but big enough to work with for my HD video. And really, there's not much of a jump in quality between 1.75 and 2 times, although the 2 times does have slightly better details. And finally, we did a 4 times upscale, which gives me plenty of room to zoom, but takes a long time to render. This one took me about 20 minutes, but as you can see, especially if you look over at the box office there and stuff, the details are a lot more exact and fine, and there's not a weird, funky, spiderwebby stuff going on. But again, it took about 20 minutes. Really though, I think it was well worth the time to bump it up 4 times in size. This gives me a lot of data to work with in the next stage, where I'll touch this up and break it apart into layers in Photoshop so I can animate it. I'll be able to upscale individual pieces, like I said, a crop for extreme close-ups if I need to. But I don't have to sit here and wait for 2 hours to have an upscale render out at 8 times either. Because I'm upscaling so big though, in a lot of cases, I'm probably not even going to need to upscale that small cropped version. Okay, so now I have this loaded up in Photoshop, and there's a few things I want to fix here. First up, these windows are really, really funky and not really the same at all, are they? Now, we're going to hope that this can be pretty simple because Photoshop has the new Generative Fill. So it might be as simple as me just selecting 3 out of the 4 windows that I don't like and typing in upstairs windows, blue panes. Panes not as in pain, it hurts, but pain as in window pane. So let's go ahead and see if Photoshop Generative Fill will do that for me. Now, I like using Photoshop Generative Fill more than inpainting, just because I'm used to using Photoshop more than the sort of kind of crappy inpainting tools that Automatic 1111 has. But I am looking for a new program to do inpainting with that has more of the features of Photoshop. So if you know something, let me know in the comments. Okay, so it gave us a few different options here. I love Generative Fill, by the way. So we have this one, which I like a little better, and then this one I think is even cleaner than the other two. Yeah, because this is pretty clean. It has this nice row of windows here. So we're going to go ahead and use that as our base here. And then I'm just going to, one nice thing about Generative Fill is you can just click Generative Fill and not put in a prompt. And a lot of times it'll give you something that looks like it belongs in the shot, right? And that looks like crap. That looks a little less like crap. And that looks like the least crap of all. So I think we're going to go with that one. Now I do have, down here, I do have my original file here, so I can always go back to it if I need to. But for now, I tend to, when I'm using Generative Fill, I do sort of a destructive edit. So I'm just going to go ahead and merge all these layers together here. And that destroys any way to go back, which is fine, because I don't think I'll need it. So that's good. I'm going to go ahead and regenerate just this little stripe here, because that has like a weird dark line there, and I don't think it's needed. And then I'm probably going to pop this in here too, because again, that doesn't look like it belongs, right? And there we go. That's nice and clean. So we're going to go ahead and merge this again. And then I don't like this corner either. And again, this is what I like about Generative Fills. It's just really kind of going around, popping around, and, just selecting little things. And a lot of times not even putting in a prompt and just having a perfect solution like just appeared to me. So we have that done. This window is okay, I guess. Just out of curiosity, I'm going to see what it does if I put Generative Fill in there without anything. Because you see that shadow there that's kind of on the window. I almost want to just knock that out entirely. I might. We'll see what it does with this window here first. I do kind of like the depth that shadow offers, but by the same token, not a ton. I think I like the window more. So what we're going to do, I think I'm just going to select this here and generate again and see if we can get that window to look a little bit more sort of tucked into the corner. Alternatively, I guess I could replace the wall. We'll see if this comes out looking good or if the wall is a better choice to replace. Actually, after that, I don't like the shadow on this wall, so I'm just going to replace just the shadow on the wall here. And I'll type in the wall just to guide it a little bit. Hopefully that doesn't mess it up. Oh, I actually kind of like this because it looks like a drain pipe going down there. So we're going to go ahead and merge that in. And then that can give us some depth here too. Let's go ahead and generate the rest of the drain pipe. I find that Photoshop Generative Fill, a lot of times, doing the rest of will help keep you from getting like weird, funky results that don't look like they belong in your image. So here's one. There we go. That's a perfect drain pipe, right? So we'll go ahead and merge that in. And then I don't like this corner here. I don't know what's going on exactly. So I'm just going to select that guy, do another Generative Fill. This is one of the annoying things about Photoshop. Oftentimes it'll just tell you, no, we don't like that content. One of the reasons I really like having Stable Diffusion, almost to its peril, it never tosses you back out. So let's say the wall. So it doesn't think I'm trying to generate a boob or, I don't know, other parts that you shouldn't be generating according to Adobe. And really according to me too. I don't have a lot of taste for it personally, but you can't fault people. Actually, I kind of like this because it looks almost like a weird little fire alarm there. So I'm going to go ahead and keep that. And then last but not least for these windows up here, I really don't like this 2x4 or the plywood up here. So I'm just going to try and hit Generate Fill. It might generate a taller window. It might generate the wall. I'm really happy with either. I can go either way. And there's another window. And there's another window. And there's another window. Which one looks most like the other windows? That one. All right, so we'll go ahead and go with that one. So we have the whole top done now. Okay, next up, we're going to bring a little TLC to this mural here, because while this face guy looks weird and funky and totally 90s, it's a little too weird and funky and totally 90s for my taste. It doesn't look intentionally weird and funky. It looks like I funked it up, right? So first thing I'm going to do is it really seems to lose cohesion here in this yellow area and into this blue area. So I'm just going to select, starting with this blue little weird upper lip thing here. I'm just going to select around, make sure I get all of the funky while leaving all of the stuff I already like, and I'd like the rest of it to just be like that, right? So we'll go ahead and select all of the funky. And we're just going to go ahead and roll the dice and see what it decides to put in there. I'm hoping it puts just most of that maroon color in there too, because that maroon color really represents the guy's skin tone, right? The guy's face. And that did a pretty good job. There's one option. There's another option. And there's a third option. I think I'm going to go with the second option because this corner here almost makes it look even more like a smile, which is a lot of fun. But I still don't like the funkiness I put down here in the corner. So I'm going to try and knock that out. And again, I'm not going to put a prompt because I found a lot of times with the Adobe Photoshop Generative Fill, you really don't need a prompt. It does a really good job of figuring out what's going on in the image. And I know I'm the open source guy. I don't mean to be giving a glow up to Adobe, but this is a quick and easy way to do it versus struggling with the in-painting tools in Stable Diffusion. So that's fixed up there good. We got this little blue teardrop here. We're going to fill, generate there. That you could do with content-aware fill, which has been in Photoshop for forever though. But I just tend to use the generative fill by default because it's there. And sometimes it's less hassle than using content-aware fill. All right, so I like this thing that represents the nose. We're going to keep that. The teeth look fine. The mouth looks fine. What's going on here? I don't even understand what's going on here. So first of all, we're going to go ahead and select this. We'll leave a little bit of that blue in there so it kind of hopefully figures out what I'm trying to do here. Actually, I'm going to select this stuff too. Okay, let's see what it puts in there. Sometimes I'll take it little piece by piece instead of doing the whole area, because if you do the whole area, sometimes it gets a little too creative there, and we want to try and keep the general shape of this guy's face. See? A lot better already. Check out the other options. Actually, I like this one because it respects sort of the roundness of his eye a bit more. So we'll fold that in. And then part of me likes this, part of me doesn't. So I'm just going to see what it looks like if I knock out this little red schnoop-de-doo here. And yes, so that's the technical design term, a red schnoop-de-doo. Red schnoop-de-doo gone. There's one option. There's another option. There's a third option. Honestly, I think the first option is best. So we're going to go ahead and keep that. And let's see here, as far as funkiness is concerned. This guy is really weird, this little yellow tendril here. So see if we can knock that out. And, I like that guy, actually. I'm going to keep him. Because, this sort of 90s art style, it's okay to have little funky pieces here and there. But I just thought there were so many funky pieces, it was hard to see the face, right? So let's go ahead and knock this schmoop-de-doo out. I'm going to be making up a ton of names for a ton of different parts. Sorry about that. You'll have to bear with me. Okay, so there's that one that looks like it put a teardrop down there, and then that one. Actually, the third one I think looks the most cohesive. And then I'm pretty much happy. Ooh, you know what? Let's knock this purple circle out here, because I don't even know what that's supposed to be. And it's kind of distracting from the fact that this is supposed to be his nose, right? So let's go ahead and knock this out of here. Yep, that knocked out there really nice. That knocked out nice, man. And yeah, I like the little roundness to come back into that sort of cyan color there. So we'll keep that. And then this can kind of be said to be his ear. And that guy's okay, I think. This looks like a cut on his face, which actually could have some sort of artistic meaning to it based on how the Everly Arts Council works within the context of the story. So I'm going to leave this little guy with a tear here. And I kind of like that. Yeah, really the only other thing I see here is just this whole section of yellow. I'd like for it to be a bit more cohesive and like it's all part of the same line, right? So we're just going to go ahead and make sure we keep a little bit of the yellow in the shot here, but just kind of go ahead and select around the outline of what we want to keep. And hopefully the generative fill will just tie all this together and make that like one smooth yellow line coming down through there. I think out of all of them, that one looks good. I'm still going to do one more generative fill here, and I'm going to try and knock this big blob of blue out. I feel like that's a little bit distracting. Yep, that's better. Even better. Less better. This is okay. Yeah, kind of like saying that this is sort of a cut on his cheek, right? Because again, I don't want to get too in the weeds on the story, but this is set in 1994, and about 2.5, 3 years later is when the Arts Council sort of has a cut on its face, a mark on its face. So it might be kind of fun to kind of foreshadow that within the art style, right? Man, it just does not want to get rid of the big deep there. You know, sometimes content-aware fill will end up doing a little better of a job. And here's our preview. Yeah, and actually that knocks it right out. So we're going to go ahead and say, okay, to content-aware fill. Hi, I'm content-aware Phil. I wonder if anyone's made that joke. All right, so, okay, content-aware Phil, right? That's fun. All right, so next up, now we have a couple of funky doorknobs we need to fix. Hopefully this will be relatively simple. Like we have this guy right here. Actually, you know what? Honestly, this guy right here, I think there should probably be just a matching portal like this one over there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this. Then I'm going to paste it in place. I'm going to go to transform. And I'm going to flip horizontal just to change up how it is. Just to change up how it is the technical term for it. And then we'll make it just a little bit smaller here. Let's see. I do like this weird purpley guy thing back here. So I don't want to lose him. So let me go ahead and just do a rough selection on all that. And then we're going to copy this and Control-Shift-V to paste in place. Now we have that on top of the portal. And then I can just clean it up a little bit to respect the portal. And yeah, so let's see here. Actually, we can probably move the portal just a wee bit. Just a wee little bit there. Actually, that does a pretty good job at covering up that funky doorknob too. So I think we're gonna keep that as is. Okay, so now we're gonna merge all these down. They're all merged down into the image, and I'm just gonna select this part here. And see if Generative Fill can sort of fix that up for us. Because right now there's a couple images sort of layered on there that we want to correct a bit. You know, I could go through manually and cut them out myself and fix it, but why do that when this will work? See? Look, that looks nice. All right, and then last but not least for this one, we're going to make sure that door seam is respected, and then we're going to just cut out around the outlines of where I copied and pasted it from because it's slightly darker over there. And Generative Fill should be able to I always say when I'm doing Generative Fill, make it make sense, Adobe, make it make sense. And so hopefully Adobe will make it make sense without me having to tinker a bunch. Adobe didn't make it make sense. Let's try that again. Let's go ahead and just select more of this darker blue here. Because it might be like, no, you want dark blue, right? No, Adobe. I don't want dark blue. Yeah, and let's go ahead and leave a little bit of the portal in there too. And then I'm actually going to go ahead and bring the shadow in here too and select that. This might help it lock in a little better. Let's see what it does. It might attach it to that weird little funky star there too. So we'll see. And we're perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. All right, so we'll go ahead and merge that down. And then these little funky guys here, we don't really want those. We just want wall shadows. So we'll go ahead and select these very roughly. Again, with Generative Fill, you don't have to be very precise in how you do things because Adobe will make it make sense, usually. And there, it made sense, right? Make it make sense. Well, this guy, I think, could kind of function as sort of a door handle. I don't like him, so I'm going to fill him in. Make it make sense, Adobe! Boom. Perfect. All right, now we just need, here at the door, because it's a door, we need door handles. And it gave me one, a hand on the door. See, that's exactly what I want, but I want two of them. Let me make sure my selection allows for that. It does. Let me make it just a little bit wider. And then we'll do two door handles. I could get even more exact and be like on either side of the door. See, again, these are just generating single door handles. I think this is not going well, folks. And this is, you know, sometimes we're maxed out by our intentions here, but I think at the end of the day, I'm just going to leave it as is. So let's go over here. There's some other door handles. Actually, this guy, I want to knock out because what is that? Like, I like the little thing in the center of the door. It could be like some sort of fun decoration, but these just look completely random and like they don't belong there. They're not there anymore, though. And then let's see here. This looks like it's supposed to be sort of a call box. So let's put that in there. Perfect. Well, let's look at the other ones real quick. That one's good too. That one's okay. I like the first one though, because it's just a little bit funky. And then this one should probably be the actual door handle. And that one looks a little realistic. So does that one. That one looks at least a little. Let's try a cartoon door handle. Since this is a cartoon we're making. That might make it look a little bit better. Although that hasn't been much of an issue, honestly. Perfect. Nope. First one's the right one. All right. Now, you know what? I did just see this here on the face. I'm going to go ahead and fix real quick. I don't know. I don't like that. Just that weird little jut. I think if I make this a little bit more cohesive and unify those two sides, it'll play better. But you can't be too upset about getting obsessed with a face because faces are important, right? That's how we know who each other are. That one's good. It has a bit of a roundness, almost like an eyebrow, which is good. You know what? I'm going to get this corner here too because that's just all sorts of spiderwebby funk that this face does not need. So let's go ahead and generate that. Boom. First try, pretty much perfect. All right, so let's see here. Last but not least, I think I'm going to copy this window because I kind of picture this as being like the box office for various events they do there. So I copied it and pasted it. And then I'm going to just kind of extend it out this way. Then I'm going to paste it again. I'm going to paste it again and extend it out a bit more this way. And then, as I want to do, I'm going to say, Adobe, make it make sense. And I think this will be the box office, but I think I'm also going to put like a poster for something coming up here in this window. We'll see though. Or maybe I'll put it down here. Yeah, I think I'll put it down here. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Neither does that. That makes the most sense, I guess. I'm still going to fix it though. Here's what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to select this whole section in here. And just prompt it with a box office window. Because that's kind of the idea, right? That's the box office for the community center where they have all sorts of events. And it's not the theater, but they do other stuff there that requires tickets. Like the thing we're going to tease as soon as we get there. That one's not bad. That one's not bad. Actually, I think that one probably looks the best. Box office window, office inside. Let's see if we can get it a little bit more better, though. More betterer. That's what this is all about, right? Making things more betterer. That's not bad. That's bad. That's a bookshelf. Yeah, we're going to go with this. I really like this. It's kind of vague, but you kind of get what it is, right? And all right, so now we have this weird, funky sign that doesn't say anything here. So let's fill that in, and then I'll put some text on it, some actual text. Because right now, it doesn't make sense. Make it make sense, Adobe. There, that makes more sense. Now we'll just really quickly, why don't we grab one of the darker red colors from the wall here. And then we're just going to put the words box office up here. Smaller font, bigger font. We'll center that. And we'll change the font to something a little bit more fun, but not that fun. Actually, I like that. Hitchcock, or Hitchcut, rather, is the name of the font. I've used that for other projects in the past. And now we just sort of position this here. Actually, I can probably make that a little bit bigger. Oh. All right, there. So now we have our text there. Box office. Actually, I'm going to move that up just a wee little bit. There we go. The one last thing I wanted to do was to put a poster up that advertises another character in the Everly Heights universe, Danny Chance, in conversation with Marilyn Vos Savant. That is a very specific story pull from the actual story, or at least the backstory for the Last Chance Detective Agency. But if you want to kind of figure out what I mean by it, you can go ahead and read that. But I just thought it would be a fun little Everly Heights Easter egg to include. Okay, so we're going to use Adobe Cloud to select the subject here. I just want this one Danny Chance. And again, these might not be the final designs for Danny Chance. These are just ones I generated during testing that I think will work for these purposes. All right, so we have a Danny Chance here, and I'm going to be putting a Danny Chance poster right here in this corner. We'll move this for a sec. And there's Danny Chance. So we'll put him on the poster here. Hold on. I just made him smaller. I want him bigger. There we go. Make him big enough to be seen. All right, now I have to select the actual shape of the poster here so we can crop Danny. All right, bring Danny back. And then we'll mask him. Ooh, there we go. Perfect. And then we're going to zoom in real tight here because this will be just a little Easter egg just for us. Danny Chance. See, it's already too big. All right. And then enter, and then in conversation with Marilyn Vos Savant. All right, let's make that a little bit smaller here. So we'll keep Danny Chance big. Then we'll make this a little smaller. Danny Chance in conversation with Marilyn Vos Savant. And that's good. I'm going to change the font here, though. Not in conversations with, in conversation with. I think what we'll do too, just to tie this into the background, we'll change the text color to this background color. And then we'll bring it down here. And then we're just going to add in like drop shadow. And a little bit of a white stroke. Not that much, but like that. Danny Chance in conversation with Marilyn Vos Savant. Tilt that a little bit. Up a little bit. Bigger eyes a little bit. A little bigger. And this story takes place at the beginning of the school year. So we'll just put September 26, 1994. Bring that up a little bit there. There, and I think that looks pretty good, right? A lot better than it did before. Anyway, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and merge all this down. And I'll show you before, after. Before, after. And see, it looks just a lot more cohesive now. And then finally, optionally, if you want to, you can export this out at the original dimensions that we generated before all the upscaling, and then go ahead and upscale it one more time using Control-Net Tile to kind of tie everything together stylistically. But for now, I'm going to hit Control-S and save that out. That's basically the set. As for how you can stay involved and help out, go ahead and sign up for the Discord at discord.everlyheights.tv to stay in the loop. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to get back to work making Very Special. See you next time. Read the stories and join the team at everlyheights.tv. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Everly Heights. Watch us build Everly Heights in Building Dreams by subscribing to @BuildMeeksLA on YouTube. Get access to the custom Stable Diffusion models we're using to build Everly Heights, as well as our morning meeting production diary, by supporting us at patreon.com/EverlyHeights. Boom. Boom, boom, shake the room.